Hello, so this video is going to talk about Hong Kong independence movement. Let's start with a contrasting England and China governing Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a special administrative region of the People's Republic of China. It is not the same as other provinces in mainland China because it has its own political and economic. Hong Kong is a coastal city located in southern China. There's about a 7.5 million population with many nationalities living in Hong Kong. In the First Opium War, China was defeated, so in 1842, part of Hong Kong was ceded to Britain by Qing dynasty leaders. In 1860, Britain also won the Second Opium War and forced the Qing dynasty leader to cede Kowloon. Since 1898, China also leased the New Territories, which is the rest of Hong Kong that contains half of Hong Kong people, to Britain for 99 years. Hong Kong was a colony of British for over 150 years. The British governed Hong Kong as authoritarian, but gave freedom for people and treated people fairly. During the 1950s, Hong Kong economy grew very well and its area became a busy trading port and a manufacturing hub. The growth of Hong Kong's economy can be counted as the success of Britain. In 1980s, China and Britain started to talk about the future of Hong Kong. Firstly, China argued that Hong Kong should return using China's laws under the communist power. They made the agreement on the Joint Declaration in 1984. Joint Declaration is the agreement made by British and China, which requires the basic laws that help to maintain the capitalism lifestyle of Hong Kong people and exclude socialism. The basic laws were written by China without Britain involvement, which is the power that China can only use after the handover of Hong Kong. Before the transfer date, British government set up the assessment office. After China finished drafting the joint declaration, British gathered Hong Kong's people's opinions about the agreement. Hong Kong was given two choices from British, which are living under the principle of joint declaration, or no agreement at all and fully return to China's rules. This event shows that British gives right for Hong Kong people to choose. Because of the large number of differences between governing systems in both China and Britain, Britain also considered human rights abuse that had happened by the Chinese government. For example, the Tiananmen Square crackdown event, where military attacked an armed protester in Beijing. The governing system of China is communist, and the reason they have to use violence to control people is to affirm the socialism and to maintain its rule. Being British colony for a century, Hong Kong people will return to China on June 30, 1997 with the one country, two system principle. On June 1, 1997, Hong Kong was officially under the basic laws. People in Hong Kong can use autonomy and manage their region based on one country, two system for 50 years. Hong Kong people would have freedom such as protesting, making speech, expression, trading, culture, tourism, religion, and assembling. However, diplomatic and defense of its region were in the mainland China's hand. The GDP of Hong Kong people after transfer to China dropped down from 16% to less than 3%, which is bad for Hong Kong people because it is the world's second largest economy and is also a trading center and its market attracts many international investors. There is also some criticism that China tried to reduce the spatial status of Hong Kong and tried to connect mainland China with Hong Kong. For example, China constructed the linking bridge between Hong Kong and Macau to the mainland. Also, the choosing leaders of Hong Kong. China allows Hong Kong people to vote for their leaders from the list that have been approved by Beijing Committee only. In short, Britain governs Hong Kong by giving more freedom to Hong Kong people than the Chinese government did. When Hong Kong is under the British crown, the growth in economy is very high compared to Hong Kong being with China. Hong Kong is now living under the principle of one country, two system, but there is also the analysis and criticism that China tried to invade or control Hong Kong in some ways. Therefore, the future of Hong Kong in the next 27 years, which is the deadline of using basic laws, is unclear because of the differences in governing system, political, economic, freedom and culture between Hong Kong people and Chinese.
Hong Kong should be independent. According to a poll provided by the Chinese University, almost every one out of 5 Hong Kong residents believes that Hong Kong should go independent after 2047. Peace is not the answer. In 2019, the university's journalism school interviewed the 1,010 residents on their personal perspective towards the Hong Kong's future. It gave the results that the young people are becoming less supportive of fighting for government reform in a peaceful and non-violent way. According to the poll of Hong Kong Republic Opinion Research Institute, 59% of the Hong Kong residents support the protesting in the movement, with more than one of the third respondents states that they had attended the anti-government protest. They aren't Chinese. Most of the Hong Kong residents does not call themselves Chinese. Public Opinion Program at the University of Hong Kong (HKUPOP) interviewed 1,015 people by randomly calling on the phone between June 17 and 20, 2019. According to the survey, 53% of the people in the interview identified themselves as a Hong Konger, 11% identified themselves as a Chinese, 12% identified themselves as a Chinese in Hong Kong, and 23% identified themselves as a Hong Kongers in China. When it came to the question that asked about if they're proud of being a Chinese, they said no. 90% of all the people around age of 18 to 29 answered no. Surprisingly, that's only 3.1% of the young Hong Kongers who identify themselves as Chinese. Why? There are several reasons why the importance of Hong Kong independence should be recognized. Firstly, the economic impact. Because of China trying to represent Hong Kong as a trade city, property price and housing costs in Hong Kong is shockingly increased by 242%. Nowadays, Hong Kongers cannot even afford to buy themselves a landlord. 2.6% of the Hong Kong residents have to live in the coffin homes, the tiny unit with not enough area to place their belongings. It also made a huge gap between each social class in the Hong Kong. It's about have or not have. Secondly, transportation. Because there were many tourisms that came from the mainland, everywhere in all kinds of transportation, there's no seats available. Cultural impacts, especially the cultural difference and manners. According to the interview and the surveys collected by the University of Hong Kong in Kasetsart, the data showed that Hong Kong people felt that Chinese tourism aren't as polite as they should be. Another main problem of the Chinese people from the mainland Hong Kongers could see is that they damage the facilities, making public places dirty and create a bad atmosphere for the local residents. Some of the mainlander gestures and actions are unacceptable there, for example, speaking loudly in public and squatting, or even the shopping behavior and dining manners. It also caused overcrowded in the shopping mall. Another important factor is that the education system that was impacted. When Chinese government took control, the syllabus would change. The syllabus and the course in the school also include the history of China and educational channel from the mainland, which Hong Kong people felt that is a soft power strategy. Most importantly, the political distraction from the mainland, which is directly against the agreement that China having promised to Hong Kong. First thing that we will see obviously is the selection of Carrie Lam or Chung Yuat Ngo, the Hong Kong politician serving as the fourth and current chief executive of Hong Kong since 2017. She didn't get a chair by the voting of the Hong Kongers. Instead, she was selected by the Chinese government and had the power to take control of many things in Hong Kong, including to agree to support the mainland. However, in the first poll that we mentioned, the statistic shows that only 17% supported seeking independence from China and 20% were against one country, two system. It means that most of the Hong Kongers does not really want to be really independent. However, they want the political rights and freedom to decide things on their own area. For example, the election of Carrie Lam didn't get a share by voting of the citizen like it should be. Also, they should have had the opportunity to run the business inside the city because there are only 20% of all the economic system in Hong Kong that were owned by the Hong Kongers.
The Umbrella movement was the first largest social movement in which Hong Kong citizens initiated to take action and fight for democracy. It was one of the variables which influenced Hong Kongers to have faith in their power that one day they will be able to reclaim democracy and completely separate themselves from China.
world. Please record everything. This is happening, and you're watching it.
At this point, you may wonder why all of this started, so we're about to get into that right now. The Umbrella Revolution started when the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress limited the right to vote, to be elected, and to nominate. The decision caused disagreements among Hong Kong citizens demanding more transparent elections. University students initiated to take action by organizing open lectures in the civic square for raising awareness of how important it is to have real democracy. However, 2 months later, the civic square then had fences built around it to prevent further discussion. Consequently, university students then gathered together to reclaim the civic square, which was originally a public space, and this was the beginning of the Umbrella movement, which led to a long-term resistance, fighting for justice and democracy. It was the most aggressive in the last 75 years, as police used both pepper spray and tear gas against citizens who had no weapons, causing death and severe injuries. So protesters began to use umbrellas as shields to protect themselves from police violation, and also created several sophisticated signs for language to help their battle against police. For example, one that distinguishes between police use of pepper spray and tear gas, warns the danger, and even asks for specific medical supplies and equipment. Protesters have also shared information on how to quickly and anonymously pass information to others by using Google Drive or Apple's AirDrop feature, how to disable the facial recognition, which would prevent police from accessing the data, and most importantly, how to neutralize a tear gas canister and stay safe while protesting. In the past, people viewed umbrellas as symbols of political weakness. However, here, in the context of Hong Kong protests, they represent political symbols of resistance, a change for a better future. The Umbrella movement accomplished a lot. Firstly, it brought Hong Kong political circumstance to the attention of other countries all around the world, known as contested political territory, which never had happened before. Secondly, it initiated a long-term resistance of striving for democracy and self-determination. Last but not least, it promoted a political consciousness amongst the majority of young people who indicated a strong desire to separate Hong Kong from China.
Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong. Hong Kong activists are famous for being the youngest activists in the world. One of the most infamous young activists of Hong Kong is Joshua Wong. Joshua Wong is a 23-year-old political science and public administration student from the Open University of Hong Kong. Although he appears to be the face of the protest movement in 2014, but his first step as an activist started in 2010 to oppose the plan of building a high-speed rail link connecting Hong Kong and China. In 2012, he generated a pro-democracy student activist group called the Scholarism, which successfully challenged the government against Hong Kong's plan to implement mandatory patriotic education and step up into the spotlight. In 2014, Wong led one of the most famous protest movements in Hong Kong, called the Umbrella Revolution, to protest against Beijing's political involvement in Hong Kong. Although the protest failed and the event ended up with the arrest of more than 60 protesters and activists, the young-hearted Hong Kongers still proceed with their goals of regaining their fearful rights and democracy. In 2016, Wong dissolved the Scholarism and formed a pro-democracy political organization called the Demosisto to continue to fight for the liberation of Hong Kong along with his activist friends Agnes Shaw and Nathan Law. The fight continues, but the recent event of teenage Hong Kongers Shan Tong Kai murdered his pregnant girlfriend during the trip to Taiwan in 2018, prompting the new legislative law of allowing extraditions between countries. The legislative fueled the public outrage as many Hong Kongers felt that they had to take the extreme defenses of their territories, and the new protest movement emerged, in which Wong also joined. Although Wong is a big amplifier for every Hong Konger who wants democracy, he never considered himself as a significant piece to the movement. According to the interview from the Financial Times, Wong compared the Hong Kong protest movement to Wikipedia, where you don't know the contributors behind the page, but you know that there's a lot of collaboration and crowdsourcing. He also stated that instead of just having a top-down command, the group now has the bottom-up command hub, which has allowed the movement to last far longer. My job is to be the middleman to express, evaluate, and review what is going on in the Hong Kong protests when the movement is about to be faceless, said the young activist. Joshua Wong has inspired many people, not only in Hong Kong, but also the people all around the world who struggle with the unfair governing system inside their country. He proved that young people also have the rights to be involved in politics, to express their political opinions, and be able to make great changes. He also inspired many people that the voice of the lower class can shake the authorities and make them hesitate to make action. Even though the authorities still have more power to keep any threatful activists silent, with arresting and banning them from involving with their politics inside the country. But they will never be able to keep the voice of the pro-democracy seeker civilians that keep increasing silent. In the hope that one day the justice of the agreement one country two system will be restored, the Hong Kongers who support democracy will keep on moving.